I like this particular article that I found. It talks about how hormones and chemicals are linked to our emotions. Again, why I wanted to go over more diverse sources that you can kind of research on your own and how it actually works. And even here, very first thing, emotions are very complex and have different meanings to different people, but essentially emotions are a conscious experience that are categorized by states of mind, external and internal reactions, and expressions. So with that whole smiling mitigating, or that smiling eliciting that emotional response of being happy, right? That's kind of like a backwards way into it. It is a way to kind of almost hack it, but again, may not always work because they are complex. But they talk about it being like expressions being a very big part of emotional theory, that they're going about that. And then they list a bunch of emotions. Emotions are not really made out of anything, but how we feel emotions can be described. So emotions come from the arousal of the nervous system. Millions of chemical reactions take place in the brain at any given time. Chemical reactions occur because of synapses. Synapses are parts of the nervous system, and it is through these that neurons are able to transmit messages using neurotransmitters. Emotions are typically measured in physiological responses, such as expressions, right, or body language, such as, and other things too, such as pounding heart, sweating, blood rushing to the face, and the release of adrenaline. Expression is also a major part of emotions. Expression is associated with parts of the nervous system, such as the motor cortex, limbic system, and the brainstem. Parts of the nervous system that affect emotion the most are the frontal lobes and the amygdala, which we talked about, I think it was two weeks ago. So we had that. So your frontal lobes versus your amygdala, which is your lower brain, versus your higher brain, your frontal lobe, which helps regulate a lot of that. The frontal cortex is usually associated with feelings of happiness and pleasure, and the amygdala is usually associated with feelings of anger, fear, or sadness. Again, lower brain versus higher brain function. So anger, fear, sadness, they are built into us. That is part of our brain. It's just built into our system. And again, it is for reasons of survival and an adaptation of why we're built that way. And then why it does that, again, is chemically how it reacts within our body. But it is generally from a standpoint of just evolutionary survival, how we were built, and why you can't eliminate the emotions. They're there for very specific purposes of survival, right? They help us stay, help us to survive for those quick incidents. Emotions in that side of the brain help us flip to be reactive in the proper way to hopefully get out of a dangerous situation. So it's not something you can ever eliminate. And again, where we run into trouble is when excuse me, most people run into trouble is when they let their emotions rule them and rule all parts of their life, and so then they don't feel fulfilled. They miss out all the different areas of life that that gives them balance, and all of a sudden everything is just hellish, right? Or negative, or in a depressive state, or too much anxiety, too much stress, and you get these reactions of anger, fear, and sadness on your lower brain, just because of how it operates.
Do you think that where was I going with that?
Do I think that? Yes, I do think that. That's
that because you had mentioned something that caught my mind.
Like lower brain, higher brain,
right?
Reactionary.
Oh, so for instinctively acting on emotion, right? But not all of the times that the emotions that we give are the right things to give to that person. So would it be more instinct, or would it just be more irrational?
Well, okay. So again, your rational mind is different than your logical brain. Your frontal lobe is where a lot of that organizational processes happen. It's different than your lower brain, which is like where your emotions, like the amygdala, like it's talking about. So I guess you can say that more of those instinctual reactions, or those reactions are more instinctual, for purposes of survival. That's how it's built into us, and it's done on purpose. So, I mean, like I said, where we kind of get in trouble, where people get in trouble with it, is they let those base reactionary emotions stay, as if it's fact, it's there, it's done, and then not realizing like that sort of like there are people that are using their higher brain functions, you know, where they can manipulate other people because they know how they're going to react. Like it's the exact same thing that they do in hunting, you know. Hunting, you know, that why is it such a stressful, you know, say like what is it, like the foxes, when they used to hunt foxes with the dogs, and they release the fox and the hound dogs are going after them and they're all hunting. It's very stressful for the fox, you know, and even though they're doing it for sport, it's like it's very stressful for them because if they know and they could rely, because animals particularly rely on their lower brain function of these base emotions to survive. But then they become predictable. If I can scare it in one direction, that means it'll drive it to somewhere that I may know is more advantageous for me if I'm hunting it, right? So does that kind of answer your question? I know it's kind of a roundabout way of putting it. I didn't directly really answer it. Because again, it is a complex thing because it happens instantaneous. Mm-hmm. And then emotional stress, physical stress, like all these different things are contributors, you know, and again, because we're not living out in the woods, we're not out in nature, just trying to survive just with our base needs of food, shelter, you know, clothing and things like that. We've moved beyond that, and now we have other things that actually cause us stress, you know. So perspective is a huge one on here.
Okay.
So hopefully that does answer your question.
It does, yeah.
Okay, cool. Alright, so yeah, we experience a variety of emotions throughout the day. Mostly these emotions are transient in nature, but when these emotions become intensely negative or are unremitting, they can dramatically affect our biochemistry and behavior. So that's just what I was talking about. Certain brain areas in the presence of levels of different chemicals in your brain controls emotions. For example, if we are in danger, our brain releases stress hormones that can initiate fight or flight reactions, like in your sympathetic nervous system, by flooding certain regions with the neurotransmitter epinephrine, which is also known as adrenaline. There's also other chemicals involved in that, which we'll go over. When the danger subsides, our brain inhibits the stress response by sending out a calming signal in the form of chemicals, like breathing or yawning. You know, lack of oxygen. That's one way that, just the deeper breaths. And I think I mentioned that it's like I don't really sigh anymore per se. And when I meant it, and it sounds like I'm sighing during that video. It's just me releasing, consciously expending my breath so I can take a moment. What I meant was like that involuntary sigh where you're overly stressed and you get that like very outward, very involuntary one. So that's what I meant. I don't really get those involuntary ones because I do sigh, like I do breathe consciously and mindfully. So
are we sure it's not the lack of caffeine though?
Caffeine, okay, then we can get into a lot of that stuff too. Chemicals. If you don't know, I don't know if I've mentioned it in previous videos. I am not a big proponent or an advocate for using pills of any sort to change up how to deal with our stress. I am always for actually doing it naturally through the food we eat, through our exercises, through our mentality, right? So building up from there. And that's not to say that there aren't people that actually do need certain medications and things like that because of maybe they have a disorder or disease which is preventing their body from producing certain chemicals which will help maintain balance in emotionally, psychologically, physiologically. And those people do need those. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. I am not okay with people doing it in a manner of like, hey, I decided to change my lifestyle, but now I have a huge deficiency in something just on that. Or are given things. And I think we talked about it too briefly about I think it was the other day we're talking about like say counseling or therapy. A lot of people say it doesn't work, but a lot of those people don't actually commit to the changes that are discussed in those sessions fully. Like, oh yeah, I did that stuff and it didn't work. I'm like, well, what did you do? that's why my question is like, well, I'm trying. My very first question is, what are you trying? How? And then my second one is, how long did you try it for? Because consistency matters, and action, execution, and consistency matter the most in these sort of things, right? That's a whole huge side note on there, but that does get back into, like I said, like even recreational stuff. Like I've been pulling back from like alcohol consumption. It is recreational, you know, just because it's like even things like alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, you know, all these chemicals help change your physiology, your biochemistry inside of you, and can have adverse effects, especially when you cut those things out of your life, right? You start cutting, you go cold turkey, your body literally craves that because the environment it created and has adapted to of you continuously taking stuff, right? It's used to that. That's how it learned to adapt and operate. So when you go cold turkey and you don't lower it down, you know, step by step, you now have much more of a chance to relapse, to actually go back into that behavior. And that goes for anything. That can go for alcohol. That can go for harder drugs. You know, it can go for recreational things. That can even go for overeating, you know, like stress foods and sugar and soda. Sugar is one of the worst ones, I think, you know, that's out there. And again, it creates that environment of where your body's doing that. So again, understanding a little bit more about the science is what's going to help, I think, in my opinion. That may not be what your opinion is, which is fine. But yeah, that's my whole side note to this. Whew. All right. So what we were talking about on this, where do we leave off? Intensely negative, got all that. Certain brain areas, level of different chemicals in your brain. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the nervous system, how it runs into that. So hormones and chemicals keep the body working normally, and then it goes through a few of these. I'm not going to go through estrogen, progesterone, or testosterone because those are pretty standard. That is a note on there too, that the way that men and women are built, they are different biologically, and it does have to do with our physiology and biology with this, and how our body actually releases certain chemicals into our body, and how we react to different medications because of that anatomy. It's literally anatomy and physiology, and then obviously biology depending. And again, why it's not cookie cutter, right? It's not cookie cutter to say, hey, you're a man and you only have testosterone. Your testosterone rules, you know, or you're a woman, you only have estrogen rules. There are always different levels. It matters on each individual basis. But aside from all that stuff, I wanted to go over some of these other ones. So first one on the list, dopamine, your motivation and reward chemical. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter released by the hypothalamus and is involved in focus, attention, memory, drive, muscle control, and ovulation, obviously for women. It is associated with alertness, memory, cognition, happiness, and vigilance. Low levels of dopamine in the body can result in depression, impulsivity, mood swings, attention deficit, cognitive issues, compulsive behavior, cravings, apathy, and a loss of satisfaction in life activities. It inhibits rational thinking as seen in schizophrenia. So, and I believe that we're trying to say low levels can affect it. Not that doesn't, just dopamine in general is seen in schizophrenia. I might be wrong though. That I'll have to research that a little bit more. It also says dopamine is important in the brain's reward system, and elevations in its level can lead to addictive behavior, suspicious personality, and possible paranoia. Again, these are extremes, you know, and why, again, I'm more of an advocate for lifestyle changes, for dietary changes, because those are things you can control, and then cutting out a lot of recreational chemicals, whether it be recreational or legal or non, you know, just to help mitigate and maintain a healthier body, you know. And again, I fall off on that too. It's just life. You know, there are no food sources, so this one's interesting. There are no food sources that can provide dopamine directly, but consider taking foods rich in tyrosine and phenylalanine. I was like, I said it right? Phenylalanine. Phenylalanine, the amino acids required to manufacture dopamine. So both of these amino acids are seen in protein-rich foods like turkey, chicken, milk, cheese, and eggs. Yes. And I found out tyrosine is actually an amino acid. It's derives from tyros, which is Greek for cheese. So while you have that. But again, that's something, like I said, when people don't have certain foods in their diet, or they have an overabundance of it, that can cause a lot of physiological and, by extension, even psychological changes that may be undesirable, right? I think I tried to look up like phenylalanine and what it was, including tyrosine, and it's just an amino acid. It's a building block. But what I thought was kind of interesting in here is that it's used, like they will actually use this for a skin disease called I don't know how to say that. Vitiligo. But it's also used for depression, attention deficient hyperactivity disorder, so ADHD, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, pain, acupuncture, anesthesia, osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, weight loss, and alcohol withdrawal systems. So they will actually use manufactured phenylalanine for that. But I think it's here too. It also mentions like how does it work. It's actually one of those things that there's not much information about it. Because the tyrosine and what it does, again, amino acid, melanin, so involved in melanin, pigment that gives you your skin color, hair, and eyes. So yeah, changing your diet can essentially change your biological and chemical makeup in your body. That's for adrenaline and whatnot, and we'll go over that. So next on this particular list is serotonin, which is your happiness hormone. So it regulates a range of physiological and biological functions, including mood, arousal, aggression, thinking abilities, and memory. Right levels of serotonin are related to relaxation, mood upliftment, right? Excess of serotonin causes sedation and apathy, so a lack of interest or enthusiasm in life. Whereas deficiency of serotonin is associated with low mood, lack of will, poor appetite control, anxiety disorders, depression, social behavior, and sexual problems. Conditions like anxiety disorders, depression, impulsivity, mood disorders, and disturbance in the sleep-wake cycle, obesity, eating disorders, and chronic pain are associated with disruptions in serotonin level. Meditation enhances serotonin production by inhibiting activity in the stress-producing regions of the brain. First one that I found that was like that was talking about that. And again, why it's important. And again, we'll actually go a little bit deeper into that. I do have an article from Harvard Medical School that does kind of explain a little bit more about it and why it's hard to mitigate emotions, because it is built into our systems and is an unconscious action. Acetylcholine, neurotransmitter. Oxytocin. I don't think I found much in this one. Information processor. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone. So oxytocin is a hormone that is made in the hypothalamus and released into the blood by the pituitary gland. It plays a role in pro-social behavior, sexual reproduction, and during and after childbirth. It evokes feelings of contentment, calmness, security, and reductions in anxiety level. Oxytocin inhibits brain areas associated with behavioral control of fear and anxiety and protects against stress. So a lot of those lower brain functions, like I said, from the amygdala, that's driving a lot of those negative emotions. Okay, and it does say in here, it talks about like nasally administered, so more the supplemental side of it or medical side of it, and how MDMA or ecstasy increases those feelings of it. And then the deficiency in oxytocin is involved with physiology of depression and is related to poor communication, more anxiety and fear, disturbed sleep, sugar cravings, and irritability. Again, this is another reason, like I said, trying to take these things in pill form or recreational drugs will alter your internal chemistry and will create an environment, it will adapt to it, But when you try to get off of it, it will cause problems because now it has to readapt to the new environment that you've created for it. So, all right, and then GABA, your brain activity regulator. Gamma aminobutyric acid, it's just another neurotransmitter. Testosterone, so I wasn't going over. Norepinephrine and epinephrine. So your stress-fighting hormones, right? Norepinephrine is a catecholamine that acts as a neurotransmitter as well as a hormone. It is involved in arousal system in the arousal system of the brain and the sympathetic nervous system, where it is responsible for increase in blood pressure, breathing, and respiratory rate. As a hormone, it is released by adrenal glands and is involved in the fight or flight response of the body to stress. And I believe it was, I'm not sure if I have that particular article, but it does have to do with your receptors, the differences between norepinephrine and epinephrine. And I believe norepinephrine deals directly with constricting your blood vessels. So it increases blood pressure by restricting your blood vessels. But it does also help with adrenaline, with epinephrine, where it does increase the heart rate. It increases your breathing, pumps your heart harder, and then it just changes your body in there. So epinephrine or adrenaline released by the medulla of the adrenal glands surges at a time of panic and emergency. It provokes a stress response and brings out the arousal of extreme emotions like fear, anger, and amusement. Again, those lower brain emotions. Too little norepinephrine and epinephrine have been found to be associated with depression, while an excess has been seen in mood disorders like schizophrenia. So that's why I was like, okay, the catecholamine test is what I found on here. Your adrenal glands are located on top of your kidneys, but they do help with dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. I'm trying to remember because I think there was other parts of this too. Because a lot of these things, like I was reading over a lot of them, it's a lot of interesting tests and where they go from it. But yeah, it's so interesting in how our body is built. And how all these things go. Here we go. What are their functions? Epinephrine is increased blood sugar levels. That's right, for increased activity. Increased heart rate. Increased contractility, how hard the heart squeezes. Relaxation of smooth muscles in the airways to improve breathing. So all these chemical reactions are happening instantaneously or unconsciously, I should say, when your body releases epinephrine. And then norepinephrine have similar effects such as increased blood sugar levels, increased heart rate, increased contractility. But again, here we go. It also can cause blood vessels to narrow, which increases blood pressure. So that's typically the big difference between them because they're both released on there. And then that does kind of relate to your cortisol levels and how that helps keep your body revved up in your fight or flight mode. Again, we'll get to that. Next on this list is endorphins. How you doing? It's a lot. Okay, I know it's a lot of information. Just take a moment. Breathe. Slow inhale. Slower exhale. Center. Grab some water. Stretch it out. Do whatever you need to do to loosen up. I know it's a lot of information. I guarantee you we're almost done with the chemical side and all the chemistry stuff. There's a couple more, but there's one other big one that we're running into. Okay, so phew, nice little break we had there. All right, back onto it. Yes, I can switch it on just like that. All right, endorphins, pain reliever. So endorphins are neurotransmitters, chemicals that pass along signals from one neuron to the next. Neurotransmitters play a key role in the function of the central nervous system and can either prompt or suppress the further signaling of nearby neurons. The class of endorphins include three compounds. That's alpha endorphin, beta endorphin, and I believe it's gamma endorphin, which you don't really know. It just means there's 3 different types. Technically, I found one article that said there was 4 types. Yeah, one that actually said there are 4 types: alpha, beta, gamma, and sigma. But I couldn't really find any information on the sigma ones anyway. So again, these are all things that we might be discovering in the now. So things to look out for. All right, endorphins are produced as a response to certain stimuli, especially stress, fear, or pain. They originate in various parts of the body: the pituitary gland, spinal cord, and throughout other parts of the brain and nervous system, and interact mainly with receptors and cells found in regions of the brain responsible for blocking pain and controlling emotion. So, cool little fact here: endorphin is actually from endogenous, which means in like within the body, and morphine. So it is a naturally occurring pain reliever that's similar to morphine. It's similar to morphine. So endorphin. Where did I leave off on? So endorphins block pain, so just like morphine, but they're also responsible for our feelings of pleasure. It's widely believed that these feelings of pleasure exist to let us know when we've had enough of a good thing, and also to encourage us to go after that good thing in order to feel the associated pleasure later on. Maintaining a balance in these brain chemicals is a key for balanced emotions. One can help maintain emotional health to some extent by altering levels of these key chemicals through a balanced diet, limited stress, constructive thoughts, and then it's like yoga, pranayama, and meditation. So, other places, again, advocating for those types of actions that you can take, mindful actions that you can take and follow through with to help mitigate your stress levels and increase your endorphins, increase your release of other hormones and chemicals in your body that will help reduce the stress factor and leave you out of that whole pain or angry or I can't even think of it. Yeah, just that whole aggressive sort of side, that lower brain function. Okay? So when we exercise, the body releases endorphins. I know there are other ones on here. Oh, that's epinephrine. There are other ones on here. So what are endorphins? Endorphins, yeah. What are they? Ever feel amazed after a good hard workout? Yeah. So that's something I've talked about. I think I've told you about this too. One of the tricks and tips in marketing, which gyms and even martial arts schools, anything with the physical activity, what they'll do is they'll offer you a free trial. And a lot of times that free trial can range from like 3 days to a week to a month long. But it's done on purpose. Why? Because you're going to feel good working out. And if you have a limited time for you to use a certain trial period, right? You're more likely to go anyway. And if you're more likely to go, you will have a release of endorphins. You will have that decrease of pain and increase in pleasure, right, from it. And then they'll ask you to sign up after your trial. It's a great ploy, I get it, but it is also a marketing ploy for it that is utilized all the time and everywhere. Especially in, again, aspects of working out, right? I'm trying to see what else is on this one. This was why I kept this one. So what are the benefits of endorphins? There's a lot of different things here. So alleviating depression, reducing stress and anxiety, boosting your self-esteem, reducing weight, and helping you deal with pain during childbirth, which I'll never have to experience. So, yeah.
I mean, if you did, like, that would be like, what, Guinness World Record?
What was that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger and they supposedly they attached a fetus or something? Junior? Was it called Junior?
I don't remember.
I think it was called Junior.
Talking about.
Yeah, because I mean the whole idea of providing nutrients, you know, they I know there was a theory long ago that said you can technically attach, you know, the fetus to any organ, right, to pull nutrients from, and it can survive, but how long it can survive depends on like the organ, which is why women are built for child rearing. Yeah. It's so I mean it was an interesting movie for the concept of it, but I think that was during that time when that study came out that they made that movie. But it just reminded me of it. I totally forgot about that. Hey, thanks for checking out my video on here. If you like the content that I'm putting out, please be sure to like and subscribe down below and add a comment, because I'd love to see what your guys' thoughts are on this sort of content and these topics that I'm putting out there. All right, until next time, stay golden.